forward to for not even just months at this point. It's been literally years that this whole Epstein controversy and the fallout of everything that happened surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's name has been in the news right now. Obviously, over the last few months, it's kind of heated up even more and even reached a boiling point. We had moments like where people online definitively proved that the footage that was released from Epstein's cell that apparently proved that there was no weird wrongdoing regarding his death in prison, right? People basically proved that the footage was spliced and edited in an Adobe product before being published to the public at large, honestly. I mean, pretty insane that they thought they'd get away with that, but I digress. We did get some news today, and that is that the United States House of Representatives has nearly unanimously voted to unseal all of the Epstein files. This is something people have been looking forward to for a while. Obviously, throughout the majority of President Trump's second term in office, this has been almost like Achilles heel kind of issue for him, right? Where it seems like no matter what else politically is going on, all the tariff drama, all of the meetings with other countries' leaders and everything that's been going on, President Trump has basically been trying to battle for his name with this whole Epstein thing. There have been plenty of accusations, and just a few days ago, there was another 20,000 emails from Jeffrey Epstein that were released by the Democrats that purportedly show that the president was a pretty good friend of Epstein, and like I said, he's been kind of battling this issue throughout the entirety of this presidential term so far. Earlier this year, he was talking about anyone who was MAGA before who's focused on this is not MAGA now. He's called it a hoax. He's deflected from it, said, that people are basically buying into a bunch of nothing. So today, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to fully unseal the entirety of the Epstein files, which, honestly is probably going to be thousands upon thousands of pages. But the vote just took place. Like I said, it was nearly unanimous. In fact, there was only one representative in the entire vote that actually voted no on unsealing the Epstein files. So we're going to go ahead and get into this and take a look. After months of anticipation, the House of Representatives on Tuesday overwhelmingly passed a bill ordering the release of the Justice Department's files on the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It passed 427 to 1, with GOP Representative Clay Higgins as the only vote against the measure. The bill will now head to the Senate, where its fate is uncertain. About a dozen Epstein victims, including Virginia Giuffre, I believe is how you say that's brother, were seated in the front row of the gallery as the vote got underway. Some left the chamber after the tally grew above a supermajority, and passage was not in peril. Earlier on Tuesday, a group of women victimized by Epstein spoke outside the Capitol and urged lawmakers to vote yes on the bill. Several took aim at President Donald Trump directly and criticized his handling of the matter. House Speaker Mike Johnson had tried to avoid holding a vote in the lower chamber on the Epstein matter. In late July, Johnson sent the House home a day early for August recess because the House was paralyzed in a stalemate over the Epstein issue. Alright, so obviously this is a pretty major development in the entire story because for years up until now, pretty much at every level of the federal government, anyone who was even remotely close to, related to, affiliated with Jeffrey Epstein in any way, there's been this complete dark silence over the entire issue, and the only things that have really slipped through the cracks have been these massively sanitized pieces that are, it seems almost intentionally put out there in order to mentally manipulate the public. For instance, when Jeffrey Epstein died in his jail cell, for most people, it comes to mind okay, this is pretty shady. All of the details and circumstances around it don't really make sense. The official explanations that he killed himself, they don't make any sense. A few months ago, they released what is supposed to be the official footage of his jail cell, which was later discovered by people online by simply looking at the video's metadata. The video had been spliced and edited inside of an Adobe video editing product. It clearly wasn't the unedited, undoctored footage like all these people were claiming that it was. So everything that we've gotten up until this point, it seems obviously there was never going to be any answers to the question. And in terms of actually getting some results out of this entire thing, this is probably the biggest step so far, but I personally am still extremely skeptical, and I'm going to explain why in this video, but I also want to point out before I even go any further, the fact that only one person voted no on this, right, which is Representative Clay Higgins. It's why would you vote against this? For most of us, the only reason that can even remotely come to mind as to why you'd be yeah, don't release the Epstein files, nobody needs to know anything about what's going on there. Yeah, that convicted sex predator who was trafficking taking people to his island and was friends with all these big businessmen and all these entertainers and politicians and whatnot. Yeah, don't look into that. We don't want to know about that. The only reason anyone can see for why you would want this to not be released or found out about is if you have some skeletons in the closet that you don't want exposed. Now, am I outright accusing Representative Higgins of being in the files or whatever? Not necessarily, but like I said, rationally, what defense do you have for being like, nah, we don't need to know about this, cover that up a little bit more? I don't really know. But obviously, that's been kind of the mindset that, like, all of the government has had for years at this point. I mean, it's been basically behind closed doors for, like, the entirety of my adult life, probably. I mean, it's pretty apparent that some pretty horrible shit went down revolving around Jeffrey Epstein and his client list and the island and everything. And people have just been wanting answers. Now, apparently, the answers will be coming, but like I said, I'm very skeptical. Now, it would be very, I guess, misleading of me to not mention that just because this measure passed in the House of Representatives, that does not mean that it's going to pass outright. Now, if you're not from the United States, or if you're here in the United States and you don't really understand how your own federal government works, which you probably should, when bills like this get voted on, right, there's Congress, which is separated into two different sections. You have the House of Representatives and then the Senate. Now, the House of Representatives, that's who voted on this measure today. Like I said, it passed 427 to 1, so it will be advancing out of the House. Now it will go to the Senate, which will vote on it again. Now, if it gets passed by the Senate, the bill is then sent to the President, who will either sign off on it or veto it. If it gets vetoed, it goes back down. Congress has to vote on it again. If it's voted through by both sides of Congress after the President vetoes, the bill basically passes because that's the checks and balances of the federal government at work right there, right? Now, obviously, Trump, throughout the majority of this timeline so far, has been pretty staunchly opposed to the whole Epstein bill thing that being released or like any info coming out. He's pretty much outright called it like a hoax and said that people are focusing on the wrong things. And even with it passing in the House of Representatives, there are still a lot of lawmakers that have been very critical of the bill. In fact, the article goes on to further describe this. So Johnson continued to criticize the bill, that is, the Speaker of the House. His name is Mike Johnson. Continued to criticize the bill on Tuesday morning, but confirmed he would be voting and moving forward just before the votes were passed. Johnson said on the House floor that it was a, quote, political exercise and that the bill has, quote, serious deficiencies. Johnson said he hoped the Senate would make changes to it. Quote, Trump has nothing to hide, Johnson said. The president had also mounted opposition to the measure, including what sources said was an attempt to dissuade GOP Representative Lauren Boebert in the White House Situation Room from supporting the discharge petition to force a floor vote. But faced with growing support for the measure in the GOP-controlled House, Trump suddenly reversed course over the weekend and said Republicans should vote yes on releasing the files, quote, because we have nothing to hide. Pressed if he will sign the bill should it reach his desk, Trump on Monday said he would. Quote, I'm all for it, Trump said. The measure, called the Epstein Files Transparency Act, would compel Attorney General Pam Bondi to make available all, quote, unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the Department of Justice's possession related to Epstein. So this is kind of where my skepticism for this entire thing starts to play out. Now, I genuinely hope that I'm wrong, right? I hope that what I'm about to describe doesn't happen because I'm assuming most of you watching this video, I've been wanting this to happen for years. I've been wanting for this whole Epstein stuff to finally be known. That way, not that we can just move past it as a country and as, I guess, a world, because I'm sure this was an international thing, but just so the truth can finally be out there and people don't have to sit here and cast doubt and then pull doubt away, all these changing elements of everything, right? But with the way that everything works in the government and with the fact that Trump up until recently opposed this and the very specific wording at the end of that paragraph I just read you, these are the things that make me skeptical. And then also you look at the history of these other declassifications and all these other, JFK files. This is what happened on 9/11. All these different things, right? It all kind of makes me so skeptical that I almost don't believe anything will really happen, even though we're seeing these votes overwhelmingly in favor of it. So, number one, like I said, there is still a chance that, let's say, it fails in the Senate, or even if it does get to Trump's desk, even though he publicly stated, oh, I'm going to sign it, there is still a chance that he decides not to. Now, in that event that he does that, I assume that it would only be like a political suicide, essentially, for the Republican Party, because the midterm elections are coming coming up next year in 2026, the Republicans are already very concerned with some of the results that happened this year in like government elections in like Virginia and in other states where like governors and stuff were up for re-election, representative spots were up for re-election, redistricting in California, all these other things going on, right? So there's already some legitimate political threat coming based on everything going on right now, you know. So going into the midterms, the Republicans have to do something to try and keep their, I guess, majorities and to keep the country, I guess, in favor of what they're doing so that they can continue to exercise their political stature that they have right now. Now, obviously, the general public overwhelmingly wants to know what the fuck was going on with this whole Epstein thing. It's not even really up for debate at this point. Pretty much everybody you talk to is going to be like, yeah, I want to know what happened. So if it does come out somehow that, you know, the Senate or Trump decides to try and shut this down, it's going to, I believe, cause yet another big mistake, I guess an avoidable mistake really, that could genuinely threaten the Republicans politically over the next 2 or so election cycles. So if Trump knows what's best for him and the Republican Party throughout the rest of his presidency, he's going to vote for this to be declassified. But like I said, you got to look at the wording, right? At that last paragraph, you know, it says that we make all, quote, unclassified, keyword, unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials. Now, if you've ever, like, looked through any of these declassifications and stuff like that, or something, they act like they're actually giving people information, 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh, we're declassifying this, and it'll be 900 pages of info, and you're like, oh shit, they finally did something. But then 895 of the 900 pages are completely blacked out. You can't see any actual real revealing information on what's going on. And I'm genuinely concerned that that is what's going to happen here, as it did with the JFK files, as it has with anything that's ever been declassified about anything that's never had anything to do negatively with any member of the U.S. federal government. There is an established pattern through the U.S. government that when they declassify things, they're not going to declassify things that will genuinely harm public belief or public trust in the federal government. They're not going to willingly undermine themselves. I mean, they do in other ways, but they're not going to do it just so broadly and openly as to tell you, like, oh, hey, yeah, this is what really happened. All that bullshit we've been propping up for 30 years. Yeah, it was all just a bunch of brainwashing. They're not going to do it. And as we all are pretty well aware, there were definitely some U.S. government officials, including allegedly Donald Trump, the President of the United States, who had pretty complicated relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, who, with all of the evidence that's been made available, have been or knew about some of that awful shit that Epstein was doing. And so, does it really make sense that the U.S. government, right, was just going to be like, okay, like, let's say hypothetically, you know, Trump was on the island or whatever, right, he was doing some wild shit. Do you really think that the government's just going to come out and tell you, like, yeah, you know, the President of the United States, he was definitely on the island, he was definitely a bunch of sex pesticides predators. Why would they tell you? Why would, right, we're all about transparency. Meanwhile, those still in Congress and still waiting to actually be fully approved. They still have time to be redacting the files. They still have the time to be cleaning up the files. And that's what I'm truly worried is what's going to happen. You know, maybe they do release fucking 50,000 pages. Oh, we released the whole Epstein files, but if only 3 of them hold any meaningful information, and out of the 50,000 of them, 35,000 are redacted, right? Like, what are we really fighting for? That's the problem. Is I just, throughout my lifetime, have constantly been disappointed by the government when it comes to anything, and most especially when it comes to telling people the truth and being open about the things that it's doing. So I'm honestly not convinced that they're going to miraculously change course overnight and just decide, hey, you know, maybe the U.S. president, maybe some former presidents, ranking members of Congress and secretaries from back in the day, military generals, yada, 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 whole 9 yards, right? Maybe they were pedophiles. Maybe they were all trafficking human beings. Maybe they all were cutting deals with Epstein and whatnot. Maybe they were a little too close to Bubba back in the day, right? But why would they tell you that when they have no vested interest? And that's honestly why Trump and all these other politicians up until like when everybody decided that they're all in favor of voting this through, they were all trying to, you know, muddy the line. They were all trying to, no, well, we don't have to vote on it right now. We could just take recess. I mean, we're gridlocked on vision, right? Like, I'm just not ready to fall for it. You know what I mean? I'm not ready to vote for it. And you know, Absolutely. Do I hope that they're actually, for once, doing the right thing? Absolutely. Do I believe them when they say that they are? Not until I see it, okay? That's my 2 cents. Now, I'm not trying to downplay this necessarily as, like, not important, because the fact that there's been such a reversal openly shows that the public pressure has meant at least something, right? Because everybody on the Republican side is aware that their political futures are definitely somewhere in the gray zone right now, where it's like, well, this is obviously a big issue. It's not going away. It's probably now one of the top political issues that every American's thinking. We're not just going to tell people, oh, if you think it's fake, don't worry about it, guys. No big deal here. They're not going to be able to cover it up with the rug anymore. And so I think that they all finally realize, okay, we have to do something. But that something could mean anything. That something could be moving it just a little bit, or it could be actually revealing all of it. All the bombshells. Do I hope the bombshells are what we actually see and something useful comes out of this? Yes. But once again, I'm not totally convinced quite yet. Now, this is a positive step, granted, but I really want to see them walk the full walk before I'm too excited about anything. And I think as the public of America, and realistically the world, because, like I said, I think this is definitely a pretty globalized issue at this point, we need to keep the pressure up. We can't just be celebrating the victory too early. Like, oh, they're finally voting on it. Well, yeah, let's make them vote on it and then vote on it again. And then make them release the real things. And if they aren't releasing the real files, let them know that you're going to replace them with your votes, or blow up their phone lines in their offices or whatever. Send as many emails as you can until the fucking server shuts down, right? Because that's the only thing that they actually listen to. The political people of America, the only thing it cares about is generating votes in its favor. It doesn't care about anything else. If it cared about justice, if it cared about accountability, any of these things before, the history of the United States would be vastly different. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, it's good to be back, man. Sent me a video out of the month. It's actually the longest break I've taken in almost a decade. I think the last time that I was away from uploading this long was late 2016, so it's been a minute. But glad to be back. This is obviously a pretty insane topic to come back to, but to a degree, it feels like I never really left off, because this is kind of like some of the stuff I was covering before I left. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around the channel, follow me on Twitter and Twitch at something. Make sure to check out shop links down below. Thank you to my Watch Out for subscribers and support once again. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus. Well, talking about the House voting yes on releasing the Epstein files. There's been a lot going on in regards to the Epstein files, and there's a bunch of emails that have come out. It's been kind of a smorgasbord of new information, surprisingly. And there's even apparently going to be a full release of the Epstein files. It's been voted on, it's passed, but I'll believe it when I see it. I've talked about this on stream. I am fully expecting this to be the same shit, different toilet, repackaging the same material that's been released from the Epstein files 5 times now. I swear to God, these Epstein files have been remastered more times than Last of Us. They keep re-releasing the same information over and over again with a different coat of paint. They're not actually releasing new Epstein files, but they keep pretending that they are, or that what they drop is new Epstein file information. But when you actually look at it, it's the same thing that was released years ago. That's what I'm expecting here, but I would love to be proven wrong. I would love if this is finally some real unredacted new information that implicates some horrible, evil people, and real punishment comes their way, actual justice for the victims. We'll see. I have my skepticism about that. But another thing that's happened in regards to everything Epstein related is those emails that the committee has released. And there's a lot of mysteries there. Of course, the biggest being who is Bubba and what cock was in Trump's mouth potentially. And along with that, there are a lot of other people that have now been thrust into the spotlight here for their close association with Epstein. One of them being a goober named Larry Summers. Now, maybe I'm just a Neanderthal who's living under a rock, but I'd never heard of Lawrence Summers until this. But just look at the political power he's had for so many decades now. He was the 8th director of the National Economic Council under Barack Obama's presidency. He was the president of Harvard from '01 to '06. He was also the United States Secretary of Treasury under Clinton. This is a very powerful guy. And when these emails came out, people were quick to notice Lawrence Summers was very chummy with Jeffrey Epstein, even going as far as to have Epstein as his fucking wingman. He was trying to suck farts out of Jeffrey Epstein's ass, looking for tiddlywinks of advice on how he could fuck one of his students, a mentee, as he referred to her as. It is so creepy. It is vile, disgusting shit. Larry Summers has been married since 2005. These texts and emails were from 2018. Input on how he can have sex with this student of his, and it's just this series of whiny messages from him, this pathetic loser-ass shit that you'd probably find in, like, the foulest corners of Reddit. And Larry, no worry about his marriage, Summers, is begging on his hands and knees for Jeffrey Epstein to bless him with the guidance so he could have sex with this mentee of his. It is so fucking gross. And these are just what is now publicly available in their messages exchanged. Like, it is probably a lot deeper than this connection between Larry Summers and Jeffrey Epstein. This is just what they have, like, physical evidence of with these messages. I have no doubt Larry Summers being this close, where Jeffrey Epstein would refer to himself as Larry's wingman. I have no doubt these two have probably been in cahoots for a long fucking time. It is scary. Now, I also saw a clip here that someone recorded in their class at Harvard where Larry teaches, and he actually addressed what students were seeing from all of the Epstein information. This was after he made his statement of regret about his connection, calling it like a major error in judgment to communicate with Jeffrey Epstein, the most infamous pedophile in our fucking history. And he had a little bit to say about all of this, hoopla going on.
You will see my statement of regret, expressing my shame with respect to what I did in communication with Mr. Epstein, and that I've said, and I'm going to step back from the activities, but for a time, but I think it's very important.
No, Larry, you don't have my permission to continue teaching. How about instead of going over the material, you go over to the nearest prison and throw yourself in one of the fucking cells? Because it feels like the justice system's never going to do that for anyone that's closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein and all of his fucking crimes. So why don't you take it upon yourself to do that for us? Now, this video's like a day and a half old. There was an update to this story last night. He is not going to be finishing his teaching obligations at Harvard. They're investigating his ties to child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and they have made the correct decision to remove him from his position teaching here, which to me sounds like a no-brainer. One of the things in the emails that was revealed is Larry Summers trying to fuck his mentee, one of his students that he was mentoring. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to keep him in that position. That's like keeping the big bad wolf in a classroom with a bunch of little piggies there. So that was the right call, taking him off of that position during this investigation. And I feel like it's probably a pretty easy investigation when there's already a ton of evidence to his close ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The question that remains is, how close are those ties? Did he visit the island? It seems like he was very buddy-buddy with Jeffrey Epstein. I cannot imagine that these 2018 and 2019 exchanges are like the only things that they ever talked about. If I was a betting man, I would make a strong wager that this communication is not the first time they've been closely talking. I don't think Jeffrey Epstein would jokingly call himself Summers' wingman based off of only a few text messages over the course of that year. I would wager that they have been very close for a long time, and I imagine Larry Summers is implicated very deeply in a lot of the Epstein files that we just haven't seen all of yet. And it seems like that hunch is corroborated by a lot of outlets reporting that his correspondence with Epstein had extended for over a decade, after Epstein had already been sent to jail for soliciting a minor for prostitution. So it's not like Larry Summers wouldn't know this about Jeffrey Epstein. He was talking to him all the way up until like the day before he got arrested in 2019. There's no way Larry didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was and what was going on there. I just don't believe that. He can call it like an error in judgment all he wants, but he literally had already been arrested for soliciting a minor for prostitution, and that is the guy that Larry Summers was going to frequently for advice on trying to fuck one of his students. I feel like there is no world where Larry Summers wasn't closely tied to Jeffrey Epstein for a long time and wasn't privy to what was going on behind the scenes with Epstein's operation and all of that shit going on there. Now, going back to that video briefly, I find it baffling that Harvard didn't immediately relieve him of his position after the information came out, like, while they were about to conduct an investigation. I don't know why he was allowed to go into the classroom and give his statement, like his POV on everything here, and it seems like was even going to continue teaching in some capacity to this classroom. He went in there with, his PR speech like, hey guys, listen, look, you may have read some not so good yucky things about me and Mr. Epstein. I know, not a great look, but we have to remember your minds are hungry and I'm the chef. It's my duty to teach you, so we're here. Get your pen and paper out. Let's go, Poindexters. I have a teaching obligation to fulfill and I plan on doing that. Also, unrelated to everything, I have slots available for mentorship if anyone wants to be mentored by me, see me after class. Anyway, though, it's time to get back to the teaching. Like, it's so weird to me. Like, I understand they need to investigate the claims, but while doing so, he shouldn't have been allowed back in the classroom in the first place to teach or say that he is going to be able to continue teaching. Like, addressing the elephant in the room is somehow enough, and now all of a sudden he's allowed to be able to still give lectures. Who the fuck is going to want to sit there and listen to this guy who's apparently close friends with Jeffrey Epstein? I'm surprised everyone didn't immediately just get out of their seats and walk out of the class. Maybe they did. It's a very short video. It's entirely possible they did. I just find it odd, is all. Anyway, just wanted to yap a bit about Larry Summers for a bit, and that's really about it. So, yeah.
Trump calls for the death of Democrats in crazy meltdown. Video by Philip DeFranco. Guys, things are getting worse. All right, let's check this out.
Trump just gave the Democratic lawmakers to be executed. It's another chill day. So this week, a group of Democrats who previously served either in the military or intelligence community made a video addressed to troops and others currently serving in those fields. And that included people like Senators Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, and more. And they said,
this administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
Yeah.
Like us.
Yeah.
You all swore an oath.
Guys, the government is supposed to be for the people. What is going on? What is the military being used against Americans? What the fuck?
And this Constitution.
Right now, threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home.
Yeah.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
Yeah.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
and immediately you had a
And that's true. That's true. You can and should refuse illegal orders. Nothing wrong with them saying that.
lot of Republicans condemning them, right, trying to claim that these lawmakers were calling for insurrection. They're openly trying to undermine our commander-in-chief and Secretary of War, as well as insulting service members. Then you had Trump ramping up those attacks today when he wrote, "Each one of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand."
That's the same guy who just put Ghislaine Maxwell in what is essentially a five-star hotel. A woman who was convicted and found guilty of sex trafficking and sexually abusing minors. This is the same guy that is saying these veterans, these people who have served the American people, they should be put on trial all because they said, hey, if someone gives you an illegal order, don't follow it. Right? That's what's wrong with that? How does that equal an insurrection? However, conservatives don't want to give Donald Trump responsibility for the actual insurrection that he caused on January 6th.
And seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up. Seditious behavior punishable by death. And then also repost.
Wow. This guy tried to overthrow an election. That is the peak of treason. Guys.
A bunch of other attacks against those
And
lawmakers.
he's saying these people should be put to death. What the fuck?
Including one that said, hang them, George Washington would. And mind you, this is coming from a president and his supporters who say that it's actually his opponents that are inciting violence.
Right.
So among the things you saw, you have people like Governor Gavin Newsom writing, President of the United States of America just called for the death of Democratic lawmakers, saying this man is sick in the head. And you also had Senator Chris Coons adding, the administration should never try to force our service members to carry out an illegal order. Calling for the execution of senators and Congress members for reminding our troops of that is chilling behavior. Every one of my Republican colleagues needs to swiftly condemn this. And you had Senator Chris Murphy also posting a video calling for people to fight back against this, to not normalize these incitements of violence.
Right.
If you are a person of influence in this country, maybe it's time to pick a fucking side.
Yes, sir.
If you are a Republican
Yep.
in Congress, if you are a Republican governor, maybe it's time to draw a line in the sand. This is a very slippery slope that we are on. This is a moment for people to step up.
Right, and then you also had the House Democratic leaders issuing a joint statement regarding the current safety of the lawmakers that were threatened, saying, we've been in contact with the House Sergeant at Arms and the United States Capitol Police to ensure the safety of these members and their families. Donald Trump must immediately delete these unhinged social media posts and recant his violent rhetoric before he gets someone killed. And with that, the Democrats in the video that Trump specifically threatened released a joint statement condemning it, saying, what's most telling is that the president considers it punishable by death for us to restate the law. Our service members should know that we have their backs as they fulfill their oath to the Constitution. Also, I gotta say, quick question to his supporters. Do you find it even a little bit odd that his response to the video was, I'm gonna kill you, instead of saying that he had no intention?
It's a cult, bro. It's a cult. The cult leader can do no wrong. It doesn't matter. Donald Trump has said it himself. He knows that he could stand in the middle of Times Square. He could stand in the middle of a street and shoot somebody on camera, and he wouldn't lose voters, bro. This is a sickness.
Of requesting illegal orders? Like, do any flags go up? Also with that, I'll say, unfortunately, if you look at his base, especially in his Truth Social replies, you have many there just agreeing with him. And
wow, what the fuck? And this is also the Christian party, guys. Don't forget that. This is the Christian party. All of these people, I'm sure if you go and look in their bio, they got the little fucking cross and a nice little proverb, a nice little Bible verse. And look at this. Look at this.
Those calls. And as far as responses from Republican leadership, you had Speaker Mike Johnson claiming Trump was simply just defining sedition, but then also pivoting blame back to the Democrats who made the video.
I know the DOJ and the Pentagon are looking into the legality of all that, but what I can address is what everybody knows. That was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history.
I mean, what do you call it when you have ICE agents arresting, detaining American citizens and legal or documented immigrants? What do you call that? That sounds like a violation of constitutional rights. According to the Fourth Amendment, which has been in place since 1791, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, and look, it says the people, their houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. What does it mean in practice? Being arrested without probable cause. Being Hispanic is not probable cause. Being detained without legal justification. Police entering your home without a warrant. Police searching your car, your belongings, your phone, your property without proper legal authority. And evidence gathered through illegal searches being used against you. And so many Americans have had their constitutional rights violated as a result of the orders of the current administration. And so these senators, or not even the senators, these American patriots, these real, true patriots, are completely justified in making that statement. Completely. According to ProPublica.org, we found that more than 170 U.S. citizens have been held by immigration agents. They've been kicked, dragged, and detained for days. Not one, not five, not even 100, 170. You don't think 170 people having their constitutional rights violated warrants people speaking up and saying, hey, this is wrong, this needs to stop, you should not be participating in this if you claim to serve the American people?
Also had Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying that Trump does not intend to execute members of Congress, and again, slamming those politicians.
And so these members knew what they were doing. They were leading into their credentials as former members of our military, as veterans, as former members of the national security apparatus to signal to people serving under this commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, that you can defy him and you can betray your oath of office. That is a very, very dangerous.
There is no oath of office that any American servant, civil servant takes that says, I swear to violate the constitutional rights of American citizens. There are.
Message, and it perhaps is punishable by law. I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that to the department.
What? Well, okay, so now we're going to violate free speech. We're going to violate the First Amendment as well. Okay, gotcha. What are you going to punish them for? What crime did they commit in just saying, hey, by the way, if you work for the government and you have that authority to detain and arrest people and all of that, don't do that illegally. There is no crime that has been committed there. That's like saying, hey, don't shoot people in the face, right? It's just a good thing to say.
Of Justice in the Department of War to decide.
Right, last if the president was inciting violence, she again turned it back around.
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given...
Where was the violence? They literally did the opposite. They encourage people to not commit violence. Who are they encouraging to commit an act of violence?
Orders, which he has not.
Which then is why you have so many people saying, oh, this whole situation just proves why those Congress members voted.
Of course, you got these guys
Oh my God.
with the fucking Knights Templar profile picture being retweeted by the president saying, man, George Washington would. What the fuck?
But they need to make a PSA reminding the military not to obey illegal orders in the first place. And on the issue in the video, you had Melissa Slotkin actually talking to the New York.
Could you imagine if Obama did this shit? Could you imagine if Obama did any of this shit? Oh my God.
It's about how service members are actively concerned about this, especially as the legality of strikes carried out by the Trump administration have been widely questioned, saying there's a real issue there of morale and feeling like they don't have a lot of senior leaders who are protecting them. There's a lot of folks in the rank and file who feel very alone. And so with that, I think it's important to highlight that this is happening and also make sure that we don't normalize it every day. We shift what normal is. This is not normal. This is scary. It has to be called out. And if people are aware of this, especially the politicians and the commentators, and are not calling this out, they are part of the problem. I will say the one thing that's helpful about this moment in time is it is really exposing who you and others are, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
But the next step today...
How could you still be MAGA after all of this? How, bro? After the Jeffrey Epstein shit, the insurrection, now he's calling for American citizens, or he's insinuating that he thinks American citizens who did not commit a single crime, deserve to be hanged.
The truth about these Democrats and their association with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. It's what Donald Trump announced last night in all caps, and after months of desperately trying to keep the files hidden. Because the real reason he dragged his feet and fought this tooth and nail is because he was trying to protect the Democrats. That's why he was just looking out for them. And now, after calling Marjorie Taylor Greene a traitor, she had the audacity to be like, we should see the Epstein files. We've been talking about this. Trump is now trying to frame himself as a crusader for transparency. Right? Because everyone knows I asked Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune to pass this bill in the House and Senate respectively. Because of this request, the votes were almost unanimous in favor of passing. At my direction, the Department of Justice has already turned over close to 50,000 pages of documents to Congress. Do not forget, the Biden administration did not turn over a single file or page related to Democrat Epstein nor...
Why are you still talking about Joe Biden? Why? What does that have to do with anything?
Did they ever even speak about it? And so yesterday, the 30-day countdown officially began, meaning that the White House has until December 19th to release the files, just in time for Christmas. And understandably, there have been a ton of reactions to this news, some of which we covered yesterday, but one, it appears to have caught Trump's attention.
Trump hasn't been this nervous about signing something since Don Jr.'s birth certificate.
The reason
he refused to sign an executive order to release the files.
That was a good burn. I'm not a big late night show fan. I feel like it's kind of hacky, kind of corny. The jokes are kind of lame a lot of the times, but that was good.
Months ago is because it's a waste of time. And that's the thing about Donald Trump. This is not a man who wastes time on nonsense.
Mhm.
We're going to have a UFC fight. Think of this on the grounds of the White House.
This is an executive order relating to the use of paper straws.
Changing the name
An executive order in regards to the use of paper straws.
of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
But then Trump, who I think I'm jealous of how much TV time he seems to get, at 12:49 a.m. last night was a very irritated president, and he fired off a post on Truth Social saying, "Why does ABC fake news keep Jimmy Kimmel, a man with no talent and very..."
This is why they don't want to give us free college. This is why. Because this shit is only possible if you can keep a large portion of the population poorly educated. That's all this is. I am telling you, we would be living in fucking 2090 if everybody had access to, you know what I'm saying, a good college education. There is no reason. Look how we've made high school kind of like automatic. It's almost a given that just about everybody is going to have at least a high school education. We know there are people who slip through the cracks. A lot of cracks, to be honest, but still, that's kind of the standard. It impresses nobody if you have a high school diploma or a GED. It's kind of standard. Why don't we have that attitude about higher education? Like, there is no rule that says, oh, we gotta stop it there. It's because a dumb population is one that is easy to control, easy to manipulate.
or television
That's
ratings.
the real reason. We are spending trillions of dollars on the military. We are sending billions of dollars to other nations overseas. There is no excuse for why we couldn't make that happen.
On the air. Why did the TV syndicates put up with it?
Also, university also doesn't have to be expensive, right? People are always thinking in terms of how shit is priced now, right? So it's like, oh, you want free college? You want the government to shell out hundreds of thousands of dollars per person to go? No. First and foremost, it shouldn't cost that much, right? This shit isn't worth that much money. It don't need, you know what I'm saying? Most of that money is going to administration, to university administration. It's not going to the professors. It's not going to the teachers, right?
Totally biased coverage. Get the bum off the air. Right, and that coming after he threatened ABC itself on Tuesday when one of its reporters asked him about Jeffrey Epstein.
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great
This is the free speech party.
chairman who should look at that.
Right, but if, reporters, they couldn't get any straight answers out of Trump, they then tried Attorney General Pam Bondi instead. And when one asked what she'll be doing with the Epstein files over the next month, she replied,
We will continue to follow the
This dude just looked constipated constantly. Constantly, he just looks lost and constipated.
law with maximum transparency while protecting victims.
with then someone pointing out that back in July, when the DOJ released the infamous memo that provoked this whole Epstein saga, it declared that an exhaustive review of the files turned up no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Right, so if that is true, you weren't lying then why are they now investigating Democrats like Bill Clinton, Reid Hoffman, and Larry Summers? Right, the question is, well, what changed between then and now?
There's new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law.
Well, that, it may have convinced some. You have others saying they just can't wrap their heads around all the flip-flopping from the second Trump
Doesn't make any sense.
administration. And that includes people who have been Trump diehards like Joe Rogan.
I heard there's no files. I heard it's a hoax. And then all of a sudden, he's going to release the files. Well, I thought there was no files.
Man,
He wants an investigation now.
listen,
Like, what is going on?
I don't think Trump is in there in a criminal way.
Shut the fuck up, nigga. I guess you got to be a raccoon to be cool with Rogan, though.
But I think he has a lot of powerful friends that have been putting pressure on him to keep that shit under wraps.
I think that definitely has to
I
be
think it's
the
going to be.
case.
That said, there is at least one prominent thought leader on the right who's got Trump's back, even up to
Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein says that Putin has pictures of the president blowing Bubba. Ugh.
this point. And that,
Yeah, right. He spent hours with that Epstein victim who, took her own life earlier this year. What do you think they were doing? Fucking playing Monopoly?
is Ben Shapiro.
There is no evidence that President Trump is engaging in some sort of
This guy's such a fucking rat.
widespread.
How did this guy ever become famous anyway? Jesus Christ. This is how you know the country is just so desperate for racism and racist, content to be validated in their bigotry. When you make a guy a dweeb like Ben Shapiro, one of the faces of your political movement,
cover up.
you could at least, if you're gonna make it, you know what I'm saying? Like, bro, when I think of the Nazis, as evil and wicked as they are, the Brandon, like that, those dudes, you know what I'm saying? They're supposed to be kind of like Chads. You know what I'm saying? Just a bunch of Aryan, white, genetically superior Aryans, right? And this is what y'all got now? I bet you if we were to go back in time and actually see the majority of the Nazi leadership, it would also be a bunch of fucking just incel dweebs.
Of documents that if just released will solve all the mysteries, that he's hiding all of this. This whole thing was political. It was always political.
With Shapiro naturally attacking Democrats over this, but he also went after some of his enemies in this ongoing MAGA civil war. Now, this time, not Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, or Nick Fuentes, but rather a few other big names.
Marjorie Taylor Greene was a joke and remains a joke today. The attempt to turn Marjorie Taylor Greene into some sort of honest, great intellect is like the perfect example of how strange new respect is earned simply by attacking President Trump. And the reason Thomas Massey is attacking Trump on Epstein is not because Thomas Massey is so deep in the weeds on Epstein and cares deeply about, and he's right next to Ro Khanna. Come on. It's because Massey doesn't like many of the things that Trump is doing as president. Hundreds of texts over almost a year show MAGA influencer Steve Bannon and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein workshopping legal and media strategies to protect Epstein from the legal and publicity quagmire that enveloped him in the last year of his life.
So his argument is that,
again, you have no problem with Trump sending Ghislaine. You have no problem with Trump sending Ghislaine, a convicted sex offender, to what is essentially a 5-star resort. You have no problem with that.
Actually, many of the people on the right that are breaking from Trump on Epstein right now, they're just cynically using the issue to position themselves as the new leaders of MAGA once Trump's gone. Now, whether that's true or not, that remains to be seen right now. But in the meantime, if it turns out there is some seriously explosive shit about Trump or his friends or some of his allies in his files who have some egg on his face, for now, we largely are going to have to wait to see, though we should get some answers, like I said, by December 19th. But then also, as we talked about in detail yesterday, Trump's got a few different options on how to redact or delay certain parts of the file. So then also the DOJ will have 15 days to submit a summary of any redactions, the categories of documents that were released and withheld, and a full list of all government officials and politically exposed persons who were named or referenced in the documents. And so that technically would give us another deadline of January 5th to look forward to. And then, presuming that lawmakers...
All right, well, it's coming, guys. It's coming. A reckoning is coming. But you know what the sad truth is? Especially in light of how this video started with Trump calling for the death of American citizens because they use their First Amendment right to voice what is a very legitimate concern. His base, they don't care. They don't care. And they won't care after they find out that he, was doing whatever the fuck he was doing. They're not gonna care, man. And that's a part of the thing. It's like, what exactly are we gonna win out of this? I am 100% pushing. I think it should be done for, if for no other reason, for the victims to have some degree of justice, for people to be held accountable. But something tells me, even if the Epstein files drop and Trump is all over it and it's exposing him for doing the most vile shit, I don't know if it really changes anything. I don't know if it, at least not for his base. At least not for his base. But then again, maybe I'm wrong, right? Apparently, his approval rating is at an all-time low. People do not fuck with Trump. He's lost a lot of fans. People are burning MAGA hats. People are burning the merch. So, I guess we shouldn't be too pessimistic. But still, you would think more than enough has already been done for everybody to just turn their backs on him. But it just goes to show you, man, we live in an evil world. Will you let me know what you think in the comment section down below? Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace out.
we should all be Clippers fans right now because there's no way we could potentially allow the Oklahoma City Thunder to get another time. In this one simulation, I everything I love, I hit sim lottery one time, and this was the outcome. The OKC Thunder walk out with the first pick and the 10th pick because the Jazz have been playing well-ish, and their pick is top 8 protected. They end up with the Philadelphia 76er pick, which I think is top 4 protected. They end up with a pick later on, the Houston Rockets pick. We should all, if we want NBA parity to be a thing, we should all be wearing.
It's my last game anyways. Bring me the broom. I couldn't find out. Baba. Huh? What? Okay.
The lighting room. You know the windows are fucking broken.
You're lying. Baba. Yeah. I mean, I was ready to let you play and shit, but then I saw y'all weren't here. I was like, what the fuck?
Since bro, we went to go get some fucking turkey. Because we're talking about the turkey for like, we could get 2 big ass turkeys like this big. Look, this fucking big. 2. They only made like $500. Well, when we went, it was like max 2,000, 1,000. There was a bunch of fucking things. Like it came like, it was like right here all the way to like that neighborhood all the way.
But did y'all get the turkey?
We did it.
You're lying.
They wouldn't have took like the whole night. And they would have made like 5 people.
What the fuck? So y'all went for no reason? Bring me the broom. Oh, what do y'all get? Bring me the broom. The game's about to end anyways.